Function parameters allow data to be passed to and used by functions. This example uses a parameter in the function definition. Say this has phrase inside the parentheses, and that is the name of a variable. And that variable gets used inside the function code, in this case in a print statement that is indented inside of the function. So to call that function, we just call it with the argument, which in this case is a string, hi. And there we go with the string getting passed into the variable in the parameter list, and then that gets used to print. And we can change that. And we see that it will continue to update with whatever value gets passed as an argument. So the parameter can be used within the function. I have a very similar function called yell this, and it does exactly what say this says, except that it uses a string method to make the phrase into uppercase, and it uses some string addition to put an exclamation point at the end. And so let's call with good morning, and we see that this works as the example above. But what if we wanted a default value so that we can call this without any arguments? So I want to call yell this just with parentheses and no argument inside. How I would do that is when I define my parameter, I would assign it a value. So I just assigned it a default value of good night, and I can still call it with an argument like good morning, and I expect it to act as it did before, and it will just ignore my default value. But if I call it with no value, it will use the default value. So let's run that code. And we see that in the first instance of the call, good morning, the argument was passed. In the second, with no values, it uses the default. So now we know how to define functions with arguments, and we know how to give those arguments default values.